Have you noticed that some people seem to grow older differently than others? Not just in how they look, but in how they move through the world, with a kind of quiet energy, a clarity of mind, a capacity to still do the things that matter most. For decades, we've been told that aging is simply a matter of genetics, of luck, of the hand you were dealt. But the emerging science of longevity tells a different story. It suggests that how we age is less about our genes and more about something we rarely discuss: the daily architecture of our lives. The small, repeated patterns that either build capacity over time or slowly erode it. In this video, we're going to explore what that architecture actually looks like, not as a list of rules, but as a way of understanding why some bodies and minds remain resilient while others decline. What you may discover is that many of the things you thought were inevitable are actually shapeable. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The architecture of longevity. Building a life that lasts. There is a question that eventually arrives in every thoughtful life, usually sometime after the 50th year, when the pace of things begins to shift and the future feels both closer and more uncertain than it once did. The question is not simply how long will I live, but something more nuanced, more practical, and ultimately more important. The question is, what kind of aging am I heading toward? Most people have witnessed two very different versions of growing older. There is the version where independence gradually narrows, where energy becomes a limited resource to be carefully rationed, where the list of things one can no longer do grows longer each year. And then there is the other version, the one that seems almost mysterious when you encounter it. The 85-year-old who still tends their garden with enthusiasm, who travels to see grandchildren, who engages in conversations about the present and future with as much interest as the past. The difference between these two trajectories is not primarily a matter of luck or genetics, though both play a role. It is largely a matter of architecture, the cumulative effect of thousands of small decisions, patterns, and habits that, over decades, build either a structure that endures or one that slowly crumbles. This is not a conversation about defying aging or cheating time. Such language belongs to marketing, not to reality. Aging is a biological process as natural as breathing, and no amount of optimization will stop the clock. But the rate at which the body changes, the resilience it maintains, and the quality of the years available are all profoundly shapeable. Research from multiple disciplines, gerontology, epidemiology, neuroscience, evolutionary biology, has converged on a set of principles that appear consistently in populations that age well. These are not secrets or breakthroughs. They are observations about how human bodies and minds respond to certain conditions over long periods. What follows is an exploration of those principles, organized not as a checklist, but as a coherent way of thinking about the architecture of a long life. The goal is not to provide instructions, but to offer a framework, a way of understanding why certain patterns matter, how they interact, and what small, consistent choices can accomplish over time. The evidence comes from studies of long-lived populations, from decades of clinical observation, and from the emerging science of how bodies and brains change with age. The tone is not one of prescription, but of invitation. An opportunity to consider whether the architecture of your own life might benefit from a few thoughtful adjustments. The biological reality of aging. To understand what supports healthy aging, it helps to first understand what aging actually is at a biological level. This is not merely the passage of time, but a series of interconnected processes that gradually alter how the body functions. None of these processes are diseases. They are normal, predictable changes that begin earlier than most people realize, often in the 30s, and progress at rates influenced by both genetics and environment. At the cellular level, several things happen simultaneously. Cells divide more slowly over time. and the daughter cells are not always perfect copies of the originals. The telomeres, which are protective caps on the ends of chromosomes, shorten with each division, eventually reaching a length where cells can no longer replicate at all. This is one reason why tissues like skin and muscle, which rely on regular cell turnover, become thinner and weaker with age. Meanwhile, cells that are damaged or stressed sometimes enter a state called senescence. They stop dividing but do not die. Instead, they linger in the tissue, releasing inflammatory signals that affect the surrounding cells. This is believed to be one of the drivers of low-grade chronic inflammation that characterizes aging tissues. It is not the acute inflammation of an infection or injury, but a smoldering, persistent background inflammation that gradually degrades function. The mitochondria, which are the energy-producing structures inside cells, become less efficient. They produce less energy and more oxidative byproducts, which can damage cellular components. This energy deficit is felt most acutely in tissues with high energy demands, muscles, the brain, the heart. Outside the cells, changes are also occurring. Collagen and elastin, the proteins that give structure and elasticity to skin, blood vessels, and connective tissue, become stiffer and more fragmented. This is why arteries become less flexible with age, contributing to rising blood pressure, and why skin loses its firmness. The communication networks between cells also become noisier. Hormonal signals shift. Growth hormone, testosterone, and estrogen all decline, altering how the body maintains muscle, bone, and other tissues. The immune system undergoes its own transformation. Some immune cells become less responsive, making it harder to fight off new infections. Others become more prone to inappropriate activation, contributing to autoimmune reactions and inflammation. This is why older bodies sometimes respond poorly to vaccines and why recovery from illness takes longer. All of these changes are interconnected. Inflammation accelerates telomere shortening. Mitochondrial dysfunction increases oxidative stress. Cellular senescence drives inflammation. It is a web of interacting processes, not a single linear decline. This interconnectedness is actually good news, because it means that interventions that affect one process often have ripple effects throughout the system. Improving mitochondrial function can reduce oxidative stress, which may slow telomere shortening and reduce inflammation. Supporting muscle mass improves metabolic health, which reduces inflammatory signaling. The body is not a collection of independent parts, but a coordinated whole, and supporting one system tends to support others. This is the foundation upon which all practical strategies rest. The goal is not to stop these processes, that is not possible, but to slow their progression, to maintain reserve capacity, and to create conditions in which the body can continue repairing and maintaining itself as effectively as possible for as long as possible. Movement as medicine for the long run. If there is a single factor that most consistently distinguishes those who age well from those who do not, it is physical activity. This is not about marathon running or intensive gym workouts, though those are fine for those who enjoy them. It is about the cumulative effect of regular, varied movement throughout the day and across the weeks. Muscle tissue is particularly important. After about age 30, adults who do not engage in strength-preserving activities lose approximately 3 to 8% of their muscle mass per decade, and the rate accelerates after 60. This process, known as sarcopenia, is not inevitable at this pace. It is largely a product of disuse. Muscles operate on a use-it-or-lose-it principle. When they are not regularly challenged, the body perceives them as unnecessary metabolic expense and gradually reduces them. The consequences of muscle loss extend far beyond appearance. Muscle is the body's largest reservoir of amino acids. which can be mobilized for repair and immune function during illness or injury. It is a primary site for glucose disposal. More muscle mass means better blood sugar regulation. It provides the mechanical strength needed for balance, fall prevention, and independent living. Loss of muscle is directly correlated with frailty, which is the single biggest predictor of poor outcomes in later life. Maintaining muscle requires two things: adequate protein intake and mechanical tension. The tension comes from activities that require muscles to generate force against resistance. This does not have to mean weightlifting in a gym, though that is effective. It can mean bodyweight exercises like squats, lunges, and push-ups. It can mean carrying groceries, gardening, climbing stairs, or doing manual work. The key is that the muscles are regularly exposed to loads that are challenging relative to their current capacity. Aerobic activity is equally important, but for different reasons. The cardiovascular system, like muscle, adapts to the demands placed on it. Regular walking, swimming, cycling, or any activity that elevates heart rate and breathing for sustained periods maintains the elasticity of blood vessels, improves the efficiency of the heart, and supports the density of capillaries that deliver oxygen to tissues. This has direct implications for blood pressure, endurance, and the health of organs that depend on robust blood flow, including the brain. There is also emerging evidence about the role of high-intensity interval training, even in modified forms. Brief bursts of more vigorous activity, interspersed with recovery periods, appear to stimulate improvements in mitochondrial function and insulin sensitivity that are not achieved as effectively by steady-state exercise alone. For an older adult, this might mean walking at a normal pace for a few minutes, then walking more briskly or up an incline for a minute, then recovering. It is not about extreme effort, but about variety and intensity. Perhaps the most important insight from the research on movement and aging is that consistency matters more than intensity. The person who walks daily for 30 minutes is likely to outlive and outhealth the person who exercises vigorously for 2 hours on weekends but is sedentary the rest of the week. The body responds to habitual patterns, not occasional bursts. Movement needs to be woven into the fabric of daily life, not treated as a separate activity to be checked off a list. This is why the concept of non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, is relevant. NEAT refers to all the energy expended in everything we do that is not sleeping, eating, or formal exercise. It includes walking to the mailbox, standing while talking on the phone, gardening, cleaning, fidgeting, and taking the stairs. In traditional societies, NEAT is high by default because daily life requires movement. In modern environments, it has been engineered away, reintroducing it by making conscious choices to stand, walk, and move more throughout the day can have a significant cumulative effect on metabolic health and energy balance. The practical implication is straightforward but profound. The body is designed to move, and when it does not, it begins a slow process of functional decline that accelerates over time. Movement preserves function, and function preserves independence. The specific activities matter less than the pattern: regular, varied, and consistent, with enough challenge to maintain strength and cardiovascular capacity. This is not about training for an event. It is about maintaining the physical capacity to live the life you want to live. The metabolic foundation. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical processes that keep the body alive and functioning. It is how food is converted to energy, how tissues are built and repaired, and how waste products are eliminated. With age, metabolic processes tend to become less efficient and less flexible. The body's ability to handle glucose, in particular, often declines, leading to rising blood sugar levels and increased risk of metabolic syndrome. which is a cluster of conditions including elevated blood pressure, high blood sugar, excess abdominal fat, and abnormal cholesterol levels. This decline is not purely a function of aging itself, but is heavily influenced by lifestyle factors, especially diet and physical activity. The body's response to food is shaped by what and when it eats, by the composition of meals, and by the patterns of feeding and fasting that have been common throughout human history but have become disrupted in modern environments. One of the most consistent observations from studies of long-lived populations is that they eat less overall than typical Western diets. This is not necessarily conscious caloric restriction, but a natural consequence of eating whole, unprocessed foods that are more satiating per calorie. Vegetables, legumes, whole grains, and lean proteins provide volume and nutrients without excessive energy density. Processed foods, by contrast, are designed to be hyperpalatable and easy to overconsume, often delivering large numbers of calories with relatively few nutrients. The composition of the diet also matters. Protein becomes increasingly important with age because of the reduced efficiency of protein utilization. Older bodies need more protein per kilogram of body weight to stimulate muscle protein synthesis than younger bodies do. Spreading protein intake across meals, rather than consuming most of it at one meal, appears to be more effective for maintaining muscle mass. This means including a source of high-quality protein at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, rather than having a light breakfast and lunch followed by a protein-heavy dinner. Fats are essential for hormone production, cell membrane integrity, and absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. The type of fat matters more than the total amount. Unsaturated fats from sources like olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocados, and fish are associated with better cardiovascular and cognitive outcomes. Saturated fats and trans fats, particularly from processed foods and industrial vegetable oils, are associated with inflammation and negative metabolic effects. Carbohydrates are not inherently problematic, but their source and form matter significantly. Whole carbohydrates that come packaged with fiber, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, are digested slowly and produce gradual rises in blood sugar. Refined carbohydrates that have been stripped of fiber, white flour, white rice, sugar, most processed snacks, are digested quickly and produce rapid spikes in blood sugar and insulin. Over time, repeated spikes can contribute to insulin resistance, where cells become less responsive to insulin's signal to take up glucose from the blood. This is the precursor to type 2 diabetes and is associated with a range of age-related problems. Beyond what is eaten, when it is eaten may also matter. There is growing interest in the concept of time-restricted eating, which involves confining food intake to a consistent window of hours each day. This pattern aligns with the body's circadian rhythms, which regulate not only sleep-wake cycles, but also metabolic processes. Digestion, nutrient absorption, and hormone secretion all follow daily rhythms, and eating outside of these natural windows may disrupt metabolic function. Early research suggests that even without changing what they eat, people who compress their eating window and avoid late-night eating may see improvements in blood sugar regulation, blood pressure, and sleep quality. Hydration is another metabolic factor that is often overlooked. The sensation of thirst diminishes with age, putting older adults at higher risk of chronic mild dehydration. Even modest dehydration can affect energy levels, cognitive function, and physical performance. Water is the preferred source, but fluids from foods like soups, fruits, and vegetables also contribute. Caffeine and alcohol have mild diuretic effects and should not be relied upon as primary fluid sources. The metabolic foundation of healthy aging is not about perfection or extreme restriction. It is about patterns that support stable blood sugar, adequate protein intake, sufficient fiber, healthy fats, and consistent hydration. These are not new or surprising recommendations, but their importance grows with each passing decade because the body's margin for error narrows. Small, consistent choices accumulate into metabolic resilience that pays dividends in energy, function, and disease resistance. The nervous system and the aging brain. The brain ages along with the rest of the body, but its trajectory is shaped by many of the same factors that influence physical health. The concept of cognitive reserve helps explain why some people maintain sharp mental function well into their later years, while others experience noticeable decline. Cognitive reserve is the brain's ability to improvise and find alternative ways of getting things done. It is built over a lifetime through education, complex work, social engagement, and mentally stimulating activities. Neuroplasticity. The brain's ability to form new connections and reorganize existing ones persists throughout life. It is not that the adult brain stops changing. It is that the conditions required to stimulate change are different than in childhood. Novelty and challenge are key. When the brain is exposed to new information or required to learn a new skill, it responds by strengthening existing neural pathways and forming new ones. When it is exposed only to familiar routines and information, it tends to maintain existing patterns but does not build new capacity. This has practical implications for aging. Activities that are mentally challenging, learning a new language, mastering a musical instrument, taking up a complex hobby like woodworking or painting, engaging in strategy games, appear to support cognitive health more effectively than passive activities like watching television or doing simple crossword puzzles that have become rote. The challenge needs to be at the edge of current ability, requiring focused attention and effort. Physical activity is also directly beneficial for the brain. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain, delivers oxygen and nutrients, and stimulates the release of growth factors that support the survival and function of neurons. The hippocampus, a brain region critical for memory formation, is particularly responsive to exercise. Studies have shown that regular aerobic exercise can actually increase the volume of the hippocampus in older adults, counteracting the age-related shrinkage that typically occurs. Social engagement is another pillar of cognitive health. Humans are social animals, and the brain has evolved to process social information. Interacting with others requires attention, memory, emotional regulation, and rapid processing of verbal and nonverbal cues. These complex demands stimulate multiple brain systems simultaneously. Loneliness and social isolation, by contrast, are associated with accelerated cognitive decline and increased risk of dementia. The mechanism is not fully understood, but it may involve chronic stress, inflammation, and the lack of cognitive stimulation that comes from social engagement. Sleep is perhaps the most underappreciated factor in brain health. During sleep, particularly deep sleep, the brain performs critical maintenance functions. It consolidates memories, clearing out information that is no longer needed and strengthening important neural connections. It also activates the glymphatic system, which flushes out metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours, including beta amyloid, a protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. Chronic sleep disruption or insufficient sleep deprives the brain of this maintenance period, allowing waste products to accumulate and impairing cognitive function. Sleep patterns naturally change with age. Deep sleep decreases, and nighttime awakenings become more common. But poor sleep is not inevitable. Sleep hygiene practices, consistent bedtimes, a cool and dark sleeping environment, limited screen time before bed, avoidance of caffeine and alcohol late in the day can improve sleep quality at any age. So can exposure to natural light during the day, which helps regulate the circadian rhythm that governs sleep-wake cycles. Stress management is also relevant to brain health. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, a hormone that, in high levels over long periods, can damage the hippocampus and impair memory. The stress response is designed for short-term threats, not for the sustained, low-grade stress that characterizes modern life. Practices that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest branch, can help counteract this. Deep breathing, meditation, time in nature, and engaging in absorbing hobbies all have stress-reducing effects that benefit the brain. The aging brain is not destined for decline. It retains remarkable plasticity and resilience when given the right conditions. Cognitive stimulation, physical activity, social connection, restorative sleep, and stress management are not optional extras. They are essential inputs for a nervous system that continues to learn, adapt, and function effectively across the decades. The social architecture of longevity. One of the most striking findings from research on long-lived populations is the strength of their social connections. The famous studies of blue zones, regions with unusually high concentrations of centenarians, consistently identify social integration as a key factor. People in these communities are embedded in networks of family, friends, and neighbors. They have clear social roles and are surrounded by people who share their values and support their health behaviors. The mechanisms linking social connection to longevity are multiple. Social support buffers the effects of stress. Knowing that others are available to help in times of need reduces the physiological wear and tear of chronic stress. Social engagement provides a sense of purpose and meaning, which is itself associated with better health outcomes. People with strong social ties are more likely to be physically active, to eat well, and to adhere to medical recommendations, partly because they are observed and encouraged by others. Social connection also provides cognitive stimulation, as mentioned earlier, and emotional regulation, the ability to share experiences, to laugh, to express concerns, and to receive comfort has direct effects on mood and mental health. Depression and anxiety are less common in socially integrated individuals, and when they do occur, they are less severe and more easily managed. The challenge is that social networks naturally shrink with age. Retirement removes daily contact with colleagues. Children move away. Friends and family members pass away. Mobility limitations can make it harder to get out and see people. Without intentional effort, social isolation can creep in gradually, often unnoticed until it has become well-established. Rebuilding or maintaining social connection in later life requires proactive strategies. This might mean investing time in relationships with family members, even when they live at a distance. Regular phone calls, video chats, and letters can maintain bonds that would otherwise weaken. It might mean seeking out new social connections through community organizations, religious institutions, volunteer work, or classes. Shared activities provide a natural foundation for friendship because they bring people together around common interests. Intergenerational connection is particularly valuable. Relationships with younger people provide exposure to new ideas, technologies, and perspectives. They keep older adults connected to the broader culture and provide opportunities for mentoring and passing on wisdom. For younger people, these relationships provide historical perspective, emotional support, and a sense of continuity. Both sides benefit. The quality of relationships matters more than quantity. A few close, trustworthy, supportive relationships are more protective than many superficial ones. Toxic relationships, characterized by conflict, criticism, or emotional drain, can actually be harmful. Part of social architecture is learning to invest energy in relationships that are mutually supportive and to create boundaries with those that are not. For those who live alone, pets can provide some of the benefits of social connection. the companionship of an animal, the routine of caregiving, and the physical contact of petting have been shown to reduce stress and improve mood. Pets do not replace human connection, but they can supplement it and provide comfort in its absence. The social architecture of longevity is not about accumulating contacts, but about building and maintaining a network of people who matter and who matter to you. It requires effort and intentionality, especially as circumstances change. But the evidence is clear. Isolation is a risk factor for poor health comparable to smoking or obesity, while strong social ties are among the most powerful predictors of a long and healthy life. Purpose and the will to live. Beyond social connection, there is something deeper that appears in the lives of those who age exceptionally well. It is often described as a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, a feeling that one's life has meaning and that one's continued presence matters to others. In Japanese culture, this is captured by the concept of ikigai, which translates roughly to reason for being. In Okinawa, one of the world's blue zones, people can often articulate their ikigai clearly, and it is considered a normal part of life, not a philosophical abstraction. Research has begun to quantify the health effects of purpose. Studies that follow large groups of people over time find that those who report a strong sense of purpose are less likely to develop disabilities, less likely to experience cognitive decline, and less likely to die during the follow-up period than those who do not. These effects hold even after controlling for other factors like health status, income, and social support. The mechanisms are likely multiple. Purpose motivates health behaviors. People who feel their lives have meaning are more likely to take care of themselves, to adhere to medical advice, and to avoid risky behaviors. Purpose provides resilience in the face of stress and adversity. When challenges arise, people with a strong sense of purpose are better able to maintain perspective and to persist through difficulty. Purpose may also have direct physiological effects, dampening inflammatory responses and supporting healthy stress hormone regulation. Purpose does not have to be grand or world-changing. It can be as simple as tending a garden, caring for a grandchild, volunteering at a local library, or maintaining a home. It can be creative, painting, writing, woodworking. It can be intellectual, studying a subject of interest, participating in a discussion group. It can be spiritual, engaging with a faith community, practicing meditation or prayer. The common element is that the activity feels meaningful and provides a sense of contribution or connection to something larger than oneself. Retirement can be a challenging transition for this reason. For many people, work provides not only income but also structure, social contact, and a sense of purpose. When work ends, those elements can disappear unless they are intentionally replaced. The retirees who adjust best are often those who have planned for this transition, who have hobbies and interests and social networks that extend beyond the workplace, and who find new ways to contribute and engage. Purpose can also evolve with age. What matters at 60 may be different from what matters at 80. Physical limitations may require adapting how purpose is expressed, but they do not eliminate the need for it. A person who can no longer garden vigorously might still tend a few potted plants or share gardening knowledge with a neighbor. A person who can no longer drive might still make phone calls to check on friends or write letters to grandchildren. The form changes, but the function remains. Cultivating purpose requires reflection and experimentation. It means asking what activities feel meaningful, what contributions feel valuable, what connections feel sustaining. It means trying things, noticing how they feel, and adjusting. It means recognizing that purpose is not a fixed destination, but an ongoing process of engagement with life. For those who struggle to identify a sense of purpose, service to others is a reliable starting point. Helping someone else, whether through formal volunteering or informal acts of kindness, reliably increases well-being and provides a sense of meaning. The focus shifts from one's own problems and limitations to the needs of others, which can be liberating. And the gratitude and connection that come from helping others reinforce the sense that one's life matters. Purpose is not a luxury or an optional extra in the architecture of longevity. It is a fundamental component, as important as movement or nutrition. It provides the motivation that makes all the other health behaviors sustainable. Without it, the effort to maintain health can feel empty. With it, health becomes a means to an end that matters. The environment as a health variable. Most discussions of healthy aging focus on individual choices, what to eat, how to move, whether to socialize. But these choices are always made within an environment that either supports or undermines them. The physical environment, the layout of a home, the walkability of a neighborhood, the availability of healthy food, shapes behavior in ways that are often invisible but powerful. Consider the simple matter of stairs. A person who lives in a single-story home with no stairs may get less incidental physical activity than a person who lives in a two-story home and climbs stairs multiple times per day. Over years, this difference accumulates. The same principle applies to neighborhoods. A person who lives in a walkable area with sidewalks, safe crossings, and destinations within walking distance is more likely to walk than a person who lives in a car-dependent suburb with no sidewalks and nothing within walking distance. The design of the home itself becomes increasingly important with age. Features that are merely convenient in youth can become essential for independence later. Lever-style door handles are easier to operate than round knobs for hands with arthritis. Walk-in showers with grab bars are safer than tubs that require stepping over a high edge. Good lighting throughout the home reduces fall risk. Bedrooms and bathrooms on the main floor provide a buffer against the time when stairs become difficult. Technology is also part of the environment. Smartphones, tablets, and computers are tools for connection, information, and entertainment. Learning to use them, even in basic ways, maintains access to a world that increasingly moves online. Video calls keep distant family members present. Online shopping can deliver necessities when going out is difficult. Health information and appointments are increasingly digital. Refusing to engage with technology is not a neutral choice. It is a choice to accept increasing isolation and inconvenience. The social environment matters as much as the physical one. Living in a community where neighbors know and look out for each other provides a safety net. Being part of groups that share health-promoting norms, eating well, staying active, not smoking, makes those behaviors easier to sustain. Isolation, by contrast, removes these supports and makes health maintenance a purely individual effort, which is harder to sustain. Environmental modifications do not have to be expensive or extensive. Small changes can have large effects. A chair placed by a window with a good view can make sitting more pleasant and encourage spending time in natural light. A basket by the door for keys and wallet reduces daily frustration. A weekly phone call with a friend creates a social anchor. A slow cooker makes home-cooked meals easier. The environment can be designed to make desired behaviors easier and undesired behaviors harder. The concept of environmental fit is useful here. It refers to the match between a person's capabilities and the demands of their environment. When the environment is too demanding, stairs that are too steep, doorknobs that are too hard to turn, social demands that are too exhausting, the person experiences strain and may withdraw. When the environment is too undemanding, no need to move, no need to think, no need to connect, the person experiences atrophy. The sweet spot is an environment that provides enough challenge to maintain function, but not so much that it overwhelms capacity. This is a dynamic target. As capabilities change, the environment may need to be adjusted. What worked at 70 may not work at 80. Regular reassessment, not of the person alone, but of the person-environment fit, can identify needed modifications before problems become crises. The environment is not background. It is an active shaper of behavior and health. Paying attention to it, and intentionally designing it to support desired patterns, is one of the most effective and underutilized strategies for healthy aging. Patterns across time. When the various threads of evidence are woven together, certain patterns emerge. The factors that support healthy aging are not isolated interventions, but interconnected elements of a way of living. Movement supports metabolism. Metabolism affects brain function. Social connection supports purpose. Purpose motivates movement. The environment shapes all of them. No single factor is sufficient, but together they create a system that is more resilient than the sum of its parts. One pattern that recurs across all the domains is the importance of consistency over intensity. The person who walks daily for decades will almost certainly outlive the person who exercises vigorously for a few years and then stops. The person who eats reasonably well most of the time will have better outcomes than the person who cycles between strict diets and periods of indulgence. The person who maintains social connections throughout life will be better off than the person who isolates and then tries to reconnect later. Health is not built in sprints. It is built in the steady accumulation of days. Another pattern is the value of reserve capacity in multiple domains. Physical reserve means having more muscle strength and cardiovascular fitness than needed for daily activities, so that when illness or injury strikes, there is a buffer. Cognitive reserve means having more neural connections and alternative pathways, so that if some are damaged, others can compensate. Social reserve means having a network of relationships, so that if one connection is lost, others remain. Metabolic reserve means having stable blood sugar and healthy weight, so that dietary indiscretions do not tip into disease. Building reserve in all these areas is the essence of preparation for an uncertain future. A third pattern is the interconnectedness of body systems. What helps the heart also helps the brain. What supports muscles also supports metabolism. What reduces stress also reduces inflammation. There is no need to target each system separately with specialized interventions. General health behaviors, moving regularly, eating well, staying connected, managing stress, benefit everything simultaneously. This is encouraging because it means that effort invested in one area pays dividends across many. A fourth pattern is the importance of adaptation. Aging inevitably brings changes and losses. The question is not whether these will occur, but how they will be met. The ability to adapt, to find new ways of doing things that matter, to adjust goals when old ones become impossible, to accept limitations while still pursuing what is possible, is a skill that can be developed. It requires flexibility, creativity, and a willingness to let go of some things in order to hold on to others. Finally, there is the pattern of meaning. Throughout the research on healthy aging, from the cellular to the social level, the thread of meaning and purpose reappears. It is not a luxury or an afterthought. It is a fundamental organizer of behavior and a powerful influence on physiology. People who have reasons to live find ways to keep living well. They make the effort to move, to eat well, to stay connected, because these activities serve purposes that matter to them. Meaning is the engine that drives all the other health behaviors. The question of time. There is a tendency in discussions of aging to focus on endpoints, on the number of years, on the presence or absence of disease, on the level of function at any given moment. But these are snapshots, not the full picture. The experience of aging is not a series of static states, but a continuous process of change and adaptation. The goal is not to arrive at a particular destination, but to travel well. This shifts the focus from outcomes to processes. Instead of asking, how long will I live? It becomes more useful to ask, am I living in a way that supports continued function and engagement? Instead of worrying about whether a particular disease will develop, it becomes more useful to ask, am I building reserve and resilience that will help me weather whatever comes? Instead of measuring health by test results, it becomes more useful to ask, do I have the energy and capacity to do the things that matter to me? These questions are not meant to replace medical care or to deny the reality of disease. They are meant to broaden the frame, to recognize that health is not just the absence of problems, but the presence of capacity. A person can have chronic conditions and still live well if they have the physical, cognitive, social, and emotional resources to manage them. Another person can have no diagnosed diseases and yet be frail, isolated, and declining because they have not built those resources. The architecture of longevity is built day by day, choice by choice, habit by habit. It is not about perfection or about following a rigid program. It is about understanding which patterns support long-term thriving and which patterns undermine it, and then making adjustments that are sustainable over decades. The adjustments do not have to be large. Small changes, consistently applied, accumulate into significant differences over time. The research is clear on this point. The people who age best are not those who have discovered some secret or who have unusual genetics. They are people who have, often without explicit intention, fallen into patterns of living that support their continued function. They move regularly. They eat reasonably well. They stay connected to others. They have reasons to get up in the morning. They adapt to changes as they come. They live in environments that support rather than hinder them. These patterns are available to anyone who chooses to cultivate them. They do not require expensive products, exotic diets, or intensive interventions. They require attention, intention, and persistence. They require seeing health not as something to be achieved and then maintained, but as something to be continually built through daily choices. The question, finally, is not whether aging can be stopped or reversed. It cannot. The question is what kind of aging is being built, day by day, through the architecture of a life. The answer to that question is not determined by fate or genetics alone. It is shaped by the cumulative effect of thousands of small decisions, made over years and decades, about how to move, what to eat, whom to love, what to care about, and where to live. These decisions are the true architects of longevity. They are available now, and they will continue to shape the years ahead, whatever they may bring. The question that has run through everything we've explored today is not how to stop time, but how to live well within it. The single most important takeaway is this. The architecture of a long life is built not through dramatic interventions, but through the quiet consistency of daily patterns that support movement, metabolism, brain health, connection, and meaning. If you found yourself reflecting on any of these ideas, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments, not as a task, but as a way of continuing the conversation with others who are walking this same path. And if you'd like to explore more of what the Longevity Library has to offer, we invite you to browse our other videos and consider subscribing, so that new wisdom finds its way to you. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.